Hello everyone and welcome to another Top Tips for Archaeology graduates. Today I'm joined by Rachel. Hi Rachel, how are you?
Good one. Hello. Yeah, very well, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. So Rachel works in the Environment and Natural Heritage sector and she's currently Operations Director at the Don Catchment Rivers Trust. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about what that job entails.
Yeah, sure. Well, I started in the trust as project manager, so this role is a little bit of a promotion so that I keep an overview of all the various projects going on. And I also sort of look after all the staff as a line manager as well. So my day-to-day job is sort of site visits, going checking on projects, yeah, doing everything to look after staff, you know, HR, resourcing, all that kind of things. And I also look after the budgets as well for the projects. So it's a bit of a general role, keeping the trust operational, but with that comes a lot of fun, and it's a very enjoyable role.
So can I ask, what does the Don Catchment River Trust do? What kind of things does it look after?
Yeah, we're a charitable trust, and most of the UK now has got a rivers trust on it, and we operate on river catchments. And basically, we aim to restore rivers. So all the historical damage that's been done through pollution, etc., we're gradually trying to put right. So we do quite big projects. So, for example, we do fish pass projects, which is putting fish ladders on weirs because we're aiming to have the Atlantic salmon back in the catchment. And we work with a lot of volunteers as well, who I think we're at about 2 or 3 times a week with volunteers doing clean-up work and river restoration and engagement work and things like that.
Oh, that's fantastic. It sounds like you're really making a difference. Can I ask what it is that you find enjoyable about your role?
It is that making a difference. You can genuinely see the improvements you've made, and especially with all the engagement work and all the volunteers, because we survey our volunteers every 6 months just to, you know, see how everybody is, if everybody's enjoying the work, and you can genuinely see the difference you're making, not just to the environment but to everybody on the project as well. So it's quite satisfying. Yeah, job satisfaction is high. Yeah.
that's brilliant to hear. Can I ask about the other side of that? What do you find more challenging about the role, or perhaps what are some of the more difficult aspects that you have to face?
Well, I guess it's because we're a charitable trust. We don't own any of the things we work on. So as is inevitable, there's a lot of paperwork to be done, you know, trying to sort of convince some of the larger organisations to take on some of these projects. So it's kind of all that background work that can be slow going, and you've got to sort of keep chipping away at it. Eventually you get there. Yeah. But it's sort of all that background work you have to do to get to the project. That can be the difficult thing sometimes.
Yeah, I think a lot of roles have that, where what we see on the surface from the outside is one thing, but sometimes there's a lot of background work involved in getting to those points. So can I ask, how did you get into your role?
Oh, well, I don't know if I did a slightly unusual route, because from my degree I always wanted to work in museums, and I did. I went to work in museums for quite a number of years, and I did that because I did archaeological heritage management master's degree, and one of my work experience segments took me on in a paid role. And from there, I went to work with East Riding Museums, and then the Yorkshire Waterways Museum. And then I went to Kelham Island in Sheffield. And from there, I saw a role with Canal and River Trust. And I thought, oh, shall I go for it? Shall I do it? Because it was a bit of a move away from museums and heritage, but I wanted a bit of a change. And I got it, and did a year at Canal and River Trust, which gave me just enough experience in the natural heritage side to apply for the role with the Don Catchment Rivers Trust.
Oh, fantastic. So can I ask, do you think your sort of background in archaeology and heritage and the experience in museums helped you with that? How did that kind of help you make that transition from sort of more heritage-based things into the natural heritage?
Well, apparently that's exactly what they were looking for in the job, because the trust's got a lot of things like ecologists and hydrologists, but they were looking for somebody with sort of more experience with the heritage and history side of things, because there was a big engagement project going on about the history and the heritage of the river, and they wanted somebody that could sort of, you know, communicate to public, the volunteers, about that side of things. So so I'm not sort of doing traditional archaeology, sort of excavating and things like that, but it always crops up as a theme.
It's really interesting, I think, because we often think of kind of in siloed ways. So like the environment is the environment and archaeology is archaeology. But actually, to understand the environment that we have in Britain now, you really need to understand the history just as much as kind of the environmental processes. So they're very, very well closely knitted together. Can I ask, what sort of specific skills did you draw on from your time at York now in your job? What do you think you got from your educational experiences that you think were useful?
Well, there's definitely a lot of practical skills that I still use. So I'm always looking at things like, you know, old maps, aerial photography, researching in the archives. There's always that kind of thing going on. But also, I think one of the most important topics for me was the politics of archaeology, and whose story are you telling? Because, you know, I think there's been, you know, natural heritage has been a bit of a narrative, but actually there's so many different strands you need to take into consideration when you're looking at the history of rivers, and to sort of be able to think, actually, whose version of this am I looking at here, and be able to maybe slightly tell different angles from evidence that you can see. That really does help when you're communicating to communities, members of the public, you know, trying to find their angle in this rather than the official angle.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I think it's something that as archaeologists we're very passionate about, but sometimes when you say the politics of archaeology, people are like, how is archaeology political? But actually it deeply is, and we are trying to tell sometimes stories of people who otherwise haven't been heard from history. So that's really lovely. Can I ask you then finally, what are your top tips for anyone who wants to follow in your footsteps? I know from teaching students at the moment, there are a lot of students who are interested in working in the environment and natural heritage sector. So I think they'd be really excited to hear what your kind of your recommendations are for them.
Yeah, well, I guess don't be afraid of applying for things that don't specifically say archaeology, because I know in my job I do a lot of recruiting, and it's not necessarily the subject we're looking for, it's how people are applying that subject. So you might think as a natural history environmental organisation we take on ecologists and things like that. We don't always. It's always worth giving it a shot, because that's how I got into it. Rather unexpectedly, and love it now. So that's what I'd say. I'd say just go for things, because the environmental sector it's in growth at the moment. There's probably more jobs than people technically qualified to do, them, and there's always jobs coming up. So if the environmental sector is something you want to get into, just give it a shot and go for it, I say.
I think that's really great advice, and really interesting to hear you say it's not about necessarily the training, but how a candidate is able to apply that training. And I think that's something that archaeologists have lots of skills in terms of applying the knowledge that they're learning to different contexts. Thank you so much, Rachel, for taking the time to come and talk to us about your work with the Don Catchment River Trust. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Join us again next time for more top tips for archaeology graduates.